On today's More Than a Test, we have Mike Nagler from Mineola School District. It's right outside. Actually, I went out there to visit at one point, and you can just take the train from Manhattan all the way up to Mineola. It's like a 30-minute ride to this beautiful little district. And it was so great to be there with his principals, with his teachers. Every single person would tell you something about Mike. They would tell you what his goals are for the district, what his vision is for the district, what he cares about, all the different ideas he's brought to the district. And it was really fun to talk to him about on this call. He's been there for 20 years and will tell you just what can get done when you stay somewhere for 20 years and care about being what he calls the ideas man. Don't miss this conversation on More Than a Test. Mike, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So a few weeks ago, I was with you at the League of Innovative Schools Summit, and we came out to your district, and I had an experience that I have to ask you about. So one of the things that I do when I visit schools is when I see something I think is cool, I like to ask people who's responsible for this, like who did this? And time after time, I talked to a principal at an elementary school, a student in the robotics club, a teacher who was teaching synchronously and asynchronously. Your name came up first from every single person. They were like, our superintendent really wanted to do this. He read an article about a school in Japan and had this idea. I don't think that happens very often. Are you truly this tied in and dialed in at your district that like a lot of your initiatives include you?
Yes, the short answer. It's a function of being here a long time. I've been in Mineola since 1999. I've been a superintendent for 15 years. So the longevity factor definitely plays into my ability to get stuff done. But I also think I joke around all the time here that I'm the idea man. That's my job. I come up with crazy ideas and then I really don't do any work. I just hand it off to somebody else. So we have a culture here of it's okay to fail. It's okay to try things. It's okay to experiment in how we address public education as a whole, and we've won a lot of those initiatives, and we've dropped a few. But I think the esprit de corps is why not? Let's give it a try.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions. Tell me about an idea that you've had recently that you're really proud of implementing, and one that didn't make it. What was a flop?
My latest craziness is around graduating kids with purpose. So if they're going to college, great. If they're not going to college, what are they going to do? And I want better than McDonald's. So I want better than minimum wage. So we're embracing this whole notion of industry standard certifications, and launching that has been great at some points and terrible at other points. A lot of times when you launch a new idea, it takes a while to get traction, and it takes a while to really embed the concept with our community, mostly with our parents. Our kids are really ready to try everything. Parents are reticent sometimes about trying new things. I joke around that the only human that embraces change is a baby with a dirty diaper. And that has been my career in trying to figure out and move a system that really doesn't embrace change to reflect the world as it is. So I think the certification piece falls under both categories. It hasn't taken off the way I want it to, but we're also doing it. So part of it is regrouping and figuring out how to best move it forward.
Okay, so tell me this. How long have you been doing this graduation with purpose as your kind of idea?
It's like a 5-year endeavor. My own kids, I get a lot of inspiration. I have a daughter who's 20 and a son who's about to be 18, is a senior in high school, and their experience in a neighboring district has really driven a lot of my work in Mineola. From items that they don't have or frustrations that they have as students, really has enlightened me on this generation and how we need to move this generation forward and think about it differently.
Well, tell me about that. I was telling you before the show that I watched a YouTube video of you, or a video of something on something that about how you're talking about how school's not really preparing kids for the future, and we need to really radically think a little bit differently about what it means to be prepared and what the future is going to look like. So when you look at Mineola and you look at, graduating kids with purpose, what does that mean to you that we really need to be radically different?
I'm of the belief that content is dead, that the entire structure of high school is a vestige of the past.
Wow.
And the more we structure around content when information is ubiquitous in our world, the more disservice we do to kids. And things like, well, the most glaring is we don't teach children formally how to decipher good information from bad. They spend a vast majority of their time on social media without the tools and the skills to make sense out of what they see. And it's a very important skill in life, but why don't we teach that? Why don't we have a course on how to manage information that you receive every day? And I can give you many examples of things that kids are going to encounter when they leave us and go forward in society that we don't formally teach. And we continue to teach these items is readily available. They can get this information. I don't know why we need to teach it to them. We should teach them how to problem solve and apply the knowledge that they learn. Those are the skills that I think the workforce wants, society wants, but I think we're failing as public education in doing that.
Okay, I think someone might be listening and thinking, okay, is he saying like we shouldn't teach history anymore because history is available online? And I assume that's not what you're saying. Tell me a little, like, go deep with me here. Like, what do you really mean?
Yeah, as an old history teacher, no, I think history is very important. Civics are very important. So if you look at it, what's the difference between history and civics? Everyone keeps talking. We need to teach more civics, but it's a practical history that we live every day. Our society is fortunate to have a democracy, and what is your role in that democracy, as opposed to learn all the facts about Abe Lincoln and the Civil War, and name all the generals and all the battles fought. That information is attractive to some, but not to most. So the information is available. You can still learn it. But what are we doing with that? How are we taking the lessons of our Civil War and speaking about that in context of today? Because there's a lot of parallels. We're a very
Right.
divided country, so um, it's good, bad, and indifferent about why our history has led us to where we are today. And those are the parallels we should be discussing. So kids should learn the facts and they have the knowledge base. But now, how do you apply that knowledge to maybe solve a problem in the world? And it's a different lens because we launched Synergy High School here. Synergy is there are no periods. All the courses are in the cloud. The kids spend a lot of time on problem-based learning and project-based learning and applying those skills that they learn, and we trust them, because you could trust kids. It's okay. We trust them to be self-directed and do the knowledge stuff we need them to learn, but ratchet it up to another level and apply those skills in life.
It's interesting because you keep talking about the high school, and I want to talk about the high school, but everything you're saying reminds me of what I saw in your elementary schools. For a long time, what I saw our elementary schools invest in was things like PBIS, that was like getting kids to obey, getting kids to follow through, to do what I say, discipline. It was a lot of behavior stuff. And what I saw in your schools was instead a celebration and conversation around getting kids to learn and to talk about my brain developing and learning, and that everything was about, what am I going to be able to develop, and as an academic, as an intelligent human, not follow through and get a sticker because I did what my teacher told me. And I think what I keep hearing you say is the point isn't what they can rattle off. The point isn't whether or not they can follow what the teacher has said. The point is that they can own their own learning and be able to really be successful through that, and to make the decision for themselves that I want to either follow the directions of the class or go do this learning or become, more like well versed in this topic. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening in the elementary school and how you got there? I think so many people need it.
Yeah, well, I mean, kids aren't passive vessels. They have brains, they have ideas, they have thoughts, And I don't think we respect them enough. I think we need to respect that they can be self-directed if you give them the opportunity to do so. Kids should love to learn, and learning takes place in school. So by default, school should be a fun place to learn, not some vision of a jail or this authoritative
Right.
place. It's their school. It's their place to come and be happy and learn and explore and be curious and not browbeaten about what content they know. You know, more than a test. It's a great phrase. Um, good teaching will beget results. So there are many ways that we can show and assess kids and show that they're where they need to be, but change the dialogue. Change the dialogue is to what's age appropriate. So, for a kid, is where are you in relationship to the work, not in relationship to your classmate, because you're different than your classmate. And all the kids in the class are different. They're all going to be at different points in time, with interests. And how do we recognize all of that in our teaching and learning, and also provide this space for um, kids to be curious about things they want to learn? And we tell them what to learn all the time. So I think we can reconcile that. We've embraced badge books. We have badge books pre-K to now grade 5. We've been doing this for 6 years. We've gotten very good at it. We've added Genius Hour. It's a different assessment. I still have parents. I don't understand the badge books. Okay, I get that, but school's going to be a little different than when you attended. We're not going to give a standard based report card because you really don't understand that either. You're just looking to see what number your kid is without understanding what they know and what they don't know. One of the greatest things we've done over the last couple of years in our third and fourth grade is kids have evidence binders, and all of the work in their evidence folder is related to their proficiency skills, and they actually conference with the teacher and defend their grade. And they say, here's where I am on the scale. I've done all this work. I'm competent. Do you agree? And the teacher said, yeah, I mean, it's kind of self-evident. Now this is the next part we're working on, application. So it's a beautiful interaction to witness when a learner and a teacher are conferencing and speaking about the work and what the goals are and what my deliberate practice should be and what do I need to do to get better in this skill and move forward.
It's so funny. I actually saw this, not the conference of the teacher and a student, but a kid was showing me her folder. I don't know if it was a binder, but she showed me her folder. And what she was showing me was also that she could do an extension of learning, choose a topic that she was interested in. And she's like, and then I become an expert and get my badge by teaching the class about it. She's like, so let me show you what I'm doing. It was really neat, to your point of this opportunity of, I think she was a second grader who was basically telling me her full out plan of becoming an expert in something so she could teach her class. And it really was not about the badge. Like, she showed me the badge, but it was really about, I can't wait to be the person who shares this with my peers.
Yeah, that goes in the old saying is, how do you know you learned something if you could teach it to others? So this is what we teach in our young grades. We teach them about brain science. We teach them about neurons. We teach them you grow smart through hard work and effort. You're not born smart. And it's the foundational work we do in our pre-K2 buildings that launch them into a mindset of, hey, I could do this. I could tackle hard problems, and if I'm deliberate and I work hard, I can grow my neurons and become smarter. That's in life. That's a skill that's not for a particular class on a particular day. That's a life skill that we're this preparing them for life beyond high school. So we live that. That's our culture here. The high schools are harder nut to crack, so that's why I kind of talk about it a lot. I think we do elementary school very well. I think elementary teachers don't. They see it more than a high school teacher. That's just not. That's not blaming anyone. It's just a function of the way the structure of our system. You talk about center rotation with the elementary school teacher. They're like, of course, how we did not do that. You speak about it with a high school teacher, and they look at you like you have three heads. So it's and that's the work. The work is really, how do we get the skills that we know are important and accentuate them and highlight them and move them to the front burner and de-emphasize the content a little bit, so we at least we have a balance moving forward.
Okay, you mentioned it kind of a little bit of this parent piece of like getting parent buy-in really matters, and I think that that's really important. You talk about how parents didn't really understand, and I don't think teachers either. We were putting kids on a 1, 2, 3, 4, but do we really know what that was, or an even ABC? And we see this at our company in that people will say, well, we need our Fontes and Pinnell and DRA levels, and we will say back, like, what did a K even mean to you? Like when you were doing, like, what is a level K? And they're like, well, it's higher than J, and it's like, okay, well, what's a J to you? And so trying to get people to really go back to like a skills based, like what do they actually know? What can they actually do? And talk about reading that way is really hard. But I saw something that I was surprised the buy-in seemed really strong for. I'd love to know how you did it. It was this idea that kids can take, if a class they want to take doesn't fit into their schedule, there's opportunities for them to take it asynchronously. Mm-hmm. And really where it seemed like you were doing this was with your high performers. Your really bright kids are doing this. And the kids who are really hard, they really want to do these other things. And my experience leading schools of really some really talented kids is that their parents don't want them to do it after school. They want them to my kid is so special. They're so talented. Why would you not provide this for them during the day? Why not fix everyone's schedule for them? But what I heard these kids say is like, we are so lucky that there are these extra opportunities after hours. How on earth did you get that to be the mentality? Or, and how did I get to have that experience, I guess?
Well, not everything during the pandemic was bad. There were silver linings, and asynchronous learning was one of them. We're a small district. We have a 9-period day. There's just a finite number of time that you can explore things you want. And there are, if you think about college, there are required courses, and then there are electives and your major courses. And that's what we're trying to leverage on. There are things you have to take. We don't have a choice, that they're prescribed by our state, and that's what you need to do. And there are things that you can take as an elective, and then there are some things that lend themselves, computer science in particular, lends itself to asynchronous learning. And we started with that. We started, we have all of our ninth graders take AP computer science principles, which is I don't believe anyone else requires that. I think we're the only district that does that. I think it's an important subject and a skill that kids are going to use when they leave high school. And we could build a lot of different languages and a lot of different courses around that, assign it to a teacher, and accentuate the concept of office hours. Yeah. Synergy is built on an asynchronous premise, and we can, in our traditional high school, we mimic a lot of those things in how we think about doing work. So, and I think in the short term, you have high flyers taking it, but we've done this in the middle school, and we've done it in 3rd and 4th grade as well, where we'll take, we call them snacks. So students will create a course, let's say Google Slides. I don't want my teachers teaching Google Slides. It's something that can be learned, and kids would much rather go asynchronously learn it and then use it. So we require them to do a presentation using Google Slides, but we don't teach them Google Slides. We give them the resources to go figure it out by themselves. And we encourage them to do it with their friends and, have a little study group and learn it together, because that's what colleges do.
Right.
And that's okay. Learning takes place in groups all the time. So we invested and we built a whole series of snacks from grade 3 to grade 7 that are independent learning opportunities. They're not courses. They're not for credit. They're just opportunities to go do something on your own. And it's that self-directed mantra that we want here of you have to be independent, you have to be self-directed, the opportunity is there. Now it's up to you to go find it and do it. And I think that's again a culture we have in that learning doesn't take place at a specific time, a specific place. It's all the time. How do we build those opportunities? And for kids is the tricky part.
Let me ask you to reflect on something that I heard recently. I was a superintendent of a large district, and what she said to me was the hardest part about running a school district, and you're kind of saying this about a high school, is that everybody wants the scores to go up. Everyone wants kids to achieve, but many people don't want to see anything anything change. And those two things are just contradictory. Is that your experience too? It feels like things are constantly changing in Mineola.
Yes, I think if you highlight scores and that's how you define yourself, that's how you're going to be judged. When you give more of a portfolio look at things and say there are many different things that make me me, and I want to recognize all of those things, then you change the conversation. You know, we all have to take tests in our lives. I'm not anti-test.
Right.
I'm not anti-standardized tests. I think those are necessary. I am anti that's the only way you have value,
Right.
is we're going to rank and sort you by a number. I have an issue with. I don't think that works in life, and I don't think that's appropriate for kids. So where's the balance? You know, I talk ad nauseum about the balance. There are multiple ways to assess. And, you know, is your kid happy in school and do they have work that's appropriate to them? Should be the benchmarks that parents grill me on. If you want to hold me accountable as a leader, I should be able to say, your kid's happy in learning in school and all the work they receive is appropriate for where they are. That's not so easy to deliver all the time, but if we're consistent with that, then I think you're successful. That's how you measure success.
Yeah.
I also think we get hung up on things like they're silly, like these state scores, grades 3 to 8, are not an indication of your graduation rate. They're not an indication of how successful a kid's going to be in life.
Right.
You know, what metric are you using that is appropriate, has a high level of rigor, and you can point to and say, we're successful because of this. You know, for us, it's AP scores, it's our graduation rate, it's the number of advanced Regents diplomas, which is specific to New York.
Right.
Those have always been my metric. 20 years I've been doing this, that's the metric. And for 20 years, we compete with the affluent districts around us. So in my mind, here's the bar I set. We reach this consistently. This is how you should judge the district.
That makes sense. And I think that's really powerful. I think it's a hard thing to do for sure. I think it's hard to trust that the high school stuff is going to work out, but I think it's really valuable. I want to ask you about one more thing, and then I want to go back to what you just said about the 20 years you've been doing this. One of the things that you said you're the ideas man. I was in a district yesterday or 2 days ago on Monday morning. I was in a district, and I watched the superintendent take a phone call about a possible shooting at one of their, that's a threatened shooting at one of the high schools, theft at a school, it was like emergency, fire. How do you get to a place where is it just 20 years to get to be the ideas man instead of the firefighter?
Leadership is all about managing and having a vision. So they can't replace each other. I manage hundreds of things in a week, and I delegate another 500 things in a week. And my style of leadership is different than others, but I want to know everything. I want to know everything that's going on. I don't want to handle everything, but I want to know everything.
Right.
And I'm in the buildings and I speak to people. I'm highly visible. So kids know my name. If I walk around, everybody knows who I am, and they bring me every problem under the sun to fix it, and that's all great. That's what I get jazzed about. But at the same time, there's a vision we have here where we're moving forward and we want to accomplish things, and one doesn't take the place of the other. Great leaders do both, and they do it seamlessly. Not that I'm implying I'm a great leader, but I think um, the work is always has to be a balance, and I don't always see that with my colleagues. You know that you can't forsake one for the other, or you'll be just spinning your wheels in mud.
Right. You don't have to imply it, because when I was at the League of Innovative Schools, superintendent after superintendent after superintendent would say to me, "Have you met Mike? Do you know how amazing he is?" And it wasn't just that you were hosting, like it was sincere in their hearts that you are just like this incredible, candid, kind, like force visionary is like the word that I would say of the things that I heard about you at that conference. And it was interesting because after a while, the only thing I could think about was, why hasn't he gone to a bigger district? Right? Like, isn't that like kind of where these things often go, as you start small and you go bigger? And you've been at Mineola, you've been the superintendent for 20 years. Is that right?
Superintendent for 15 years.
For 15 years. Okay. Tell me, what keeps you at Mineola and what would get you to leave?
I don't think anything would get me to leave.
Wow.
This is a special place, a special community. They treat me very well. I feel very blessed to be in this position and to do the work we do. And one of the beauties about a relatively small district is you can be nimble and you can be flexible and you can lead the way. One of the great prides that we have, as me personally and us as a community, is we're copied all the time. Where people, because we're very transparent, we give all our stuff away, all our badge books, all our curriculum, everything's online. It's all available. You ask us, we give it. We're big believers in OER. And I think that that transparency to say, hey, we're able to experiment more than others, and here are the results of our experimentation. And if you want to use them, we solved a bunch of problems for you. I'm sure you'll have a bunch more, but here's a jumping off point for you to do this work if you're interested in it. And we as a community, a board, administrators, we take great pride in people copying it. You know, what's the expression?
Creativity is just undetected from.
Yeah. So either one, but in both cases, I think that's special.
That is really special. And I think we'd have a hard time finding another superintendent who has been anywhere for 15 years. When you came to Mineola, what was the role you came in at?
I started my career in New York City. Okay. So I taught social studies, and I became an assistant principal in the city. I made a lateral move after I got my doctorate to assistant principal in Mineola Middle School.
Okay.
I was there for a couple of years, and then I followed my kids to the high school, became high school principal for 4 years, and I was deputy for 4 years, and then superintendent since then.
Okay, so a couple of things. You were the principal of your kids' high school?
Not my Mineola High School.
Mineola High School, not your own personal kids. Right. Okay, and then so you're like homegrown here. You assistant principal. At what point in that journey did you look up and say, "I should be running the place"?
No. It was a default. My predecessor and mentor, there was a big uprising about the number of schools we had. So he retired, and my first job was to close 2 schools. So, in many cases, I'm surprised I'm still here. That was 15 years ago, but we were able to save a lot of money and stabilize our budget, and then reinvest that money back into the district. We were one of the first districts to do iPad one-to-ones and start to explore different ways to use tech in instructional, not really get creative with how kids not only did school, but how they express themselves and how they work with assessment.
Wow. That's really crazy. I actually think I talked to someone else. I can't remember what. There's somewhere near Pittsburgh, and they said the same thing, that it was their first year as superintendent, and they have to shut down these elementary schools. And I think this is one of those things that I don't think parents understand, in that I want to walk my kid to school. It doesn't matter that there's only 105 kids going there. Figure it out, right? And it's just not feasible with budgets to run schools that small. How did you manage that with the families who weren't going to be able to walk their kids to school anymore?
Well, we have a long history in this district. They closed the building, they reopened the building, and I'm a history guy, so I didn't want to repeat the past missteps. So we did a lot of discussion about, is it feasible to have this many schools? So my method was, well, let's agree that our structure doesn't work, and then let's talk about what schools to close. Because people agreed that 7 buildings with 3,000 kids was not financially a good idea.
Right.
And once we moved it, so the board voted to close 2 buildings without talking about which ones. Then the hard part happened, and then we got the involvement, and it's funny. I wrote a book, and it's a whole chapter is devoted to the how we get the history of Mineola, because I think it's really interesting, and it's applicable to many districts around this country.
That's really interesting. I'll definitely pick it up. Let me ask you this. So, the Orange County superintendent, one of the largest, I think it's the 8th largest school district in the U.S., said to me the hardest job she ever had was being a K-8 principal. That, like, yes, the superintendent is hard, but that was really hard. When you think about middle school AP, principal of the high school, deputy superintendent, like, is there a moment that kind of defines as like, man, that was rough?
No, my favorite job was high school principal. I'm going to change your question. I'm going to answer a different. I'll answer my own question. My favorite job was high school principal. It probably the most challenging, just for the day-to-day hectic nature of your high school principal. You know what I'm talking about. I think the difficult job is probably deputy superintendent,
Really?
because you didn't have full autonomy to do what you wanted. In the other leadership roles, you were running either a building or a district, and I had this epiphany my first year as superintendent. I'm like, wait a minute, I can change this stuff. I can't blame it on anybody, because I now have the role to effectuate change. And when you realize that, you're like, holy mackerel, we can do a lot of great things here. And that I don't want to say power, but that position is a great feeling to have.
Okay. Has there been a decision that you've regretted?
Oh, I regret decisions all the time. I regret wearing this color shirt this morning.
Especially with my yellow. We've got like an Easter thing going on.
I think regret is I don't know that I regret things. I reflect a lot to say maybe we should have done that differently. But one of the things that I think make me successful is I'm not afraid to I'm not afraid to fail, and I'm not afraid to abandon something that doesn't work. So I have a great idea in my mind. It's a great idea, and it's not really. I have no problem saying ditch it.
Right.
If it's not going to work and it's not good for kids, then don't do it. And I think a lot of my colleagues get into trouble when they don't abandon failure. Something's not working, you got to abandon it, and we'll get input on how to change it, or give it to the people doing it and say, here's just an idea how we make it better. The badge book's a great example. It has changed. Those books have changed every year. If that's what's going to work for teachers and parents, I'm all for it. There's some humility in the work that you have to step back and say, let the people that do it they know best.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes from, not necessarily invested. Like, you can have an idea, you can try something without like overdoing it. I remember when I was a leader in Denver public schools, they had gone down this school performance framework. The amount of money, I think, just to print the books about the school performance framework was like a school budget, you know? And so it's not like we could walk that back because we all had the books now, right? And that's where we were. And when it wasn't working, it was very hard, I think, for our district to figure out what to do next, mostly because they'd gone too far trying to make it perfect and not trying it where you could. So I think that's really a powerful statement. Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you about, because you're a small district that is so innovative and does so many great things. And in my opinion, what I saw from your colleagues was that they have the admiration of you the way they do of other like large districts. So I'm going to ask you to reflect on one thing that I heard from Alberto Cavallo from LAUSD. And I want you to reflect on this, and then I want to ask you about Mineola one more time. So what he said was, what makes a great superintendent is someone who is humble and courageous. And so I would love to know about a time that you were both humbled, but also courageous in a decision or in something that you did at Mineola.
It's kind of an oxymoron for leaders because, there's a humility in how you were raised and your background and how you reflect on the job. But great leaders have a confidence and I would say an attitude, but an attitude that is contradictory to humility. So you have to be out there and be bold, and sometimes arrogant, and sometimes forceful, and sometimes exert your will, but that doesn't mean you're not humble.
Right.
It's all at a given time. When you look at the role we're in, we're servants. We're servants of a community that are they're spending a lot of money to have the best education for their kids, and there's a huge responsibility in that job. And you can't sit back. The courageous part is, if you're just letting this ship steer itself, you're going to crash. And you're not thinking about, I'm thinking about my kindergarten. It's already too late for my high school. I think about my kindergartners all the time. Right. In 13 years, what world are they graduating into? And am I ready? Am I prepared? Am I making sure all of my ducks are in a row for when they leave us? And that visionary piece of it is, it drives you. It drives me crazy sometimes. It's definitely a daunting task. And I think that's the courageous piece. It's like, hey, we can't rest on our laurels.
Right.
We need to move ahead. We need to plan ahead. And in that, it's not about me. I'm doing this 37 years. I'm at the tail end of it. I'm not. There are no more accolades I can receive or care about. It's more of what are my Mineola kids? Where are they going? And am I getting them ready for that?
I love the way you continue to talk about the future, and you talked about how people copy you. You were one of the first districts to go 1-to-1 with iPads. If you look on the website, technology seems to be a really big piece of a lot of your initiatives. And I did a webinar yesterday with Tom Vander Ark, and we were talking about AI, and a lot of the questions we were getting from the audience was around like fear and safety and things like and ethics. And so I'm curious, like when you've made this decision, in my opinion, to jump, headfirst into the technology piece, where does that come from?
I think it's the pace of change. I mean, look at society. Look at all the conveniences we have in society that we don't talk about the consequence that comes with them. As adults, are we taking phones away? Do I go and tell my teachers, all right, give me all your phones before you go to work? I mean, why are you doing that to kids?
Right.
It's silly. Kids are going to be, they are society. They're in society. They're going to be leading society. We need to teach them the skills associated with the issues they're going to have. So I also think this generation is very, very different. And I don't think this generation's going to become their parents.
How are they different?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're born into information.
Right.
They speak about Gen Z, that's the loneliest generation. because you can't hide anything from them. When we were kids, our parents could hide a lot of things. It not so much now, and they're and it affects their mental health. It affects their relationships, and it should be affecting school a lot more in dealing with how we structure a day for a kid. Because they're also entrepreneurs. They also access information. They also, one of my favorite ones, Crash Course. You familiar with Crash Course?
No.
So Crash Course is an online video, two sarcastic guys teaching you everything under the sun. And Crash Course has over 1 billion views.
Interesting.
Because high school kids, when they don't understand their teachers, go online and find information and teach themselves. And, brag on my son. My son won ISIF, which is the International Society for Engineering.
Wow.
It's the Regeneron. He won sole first place at 15 years old.
Wow.
And his project, he taught himself everything about this project. His school did not teach him anything.
Wow.
And he was able to independently learn and create and be entrepreneurial using the resources available to him.
To me, it sounds like you are a lot more afraid for children's mental health, their personal well-being, their relationships than you are about technology. Is that true? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, well, it's a function. One's a function of the other.
Yeah.
We live in technology. You can't get away from it. How are we teaching kids to deal with it and live with it and not get sucked into the vortex that it could create? That's our responsibility. Especially if we give kids devices. We give them devices, we better be teaching them how to use them and how to use them safely.
Yeah.
And AI is no different. AI is going to, I'm not afraid of it. I think there's it's going to force change faster because everyone's going to look to try to stop it, and it really will be unstoppable. So now, all right, maybe we're going to sit back and say, well, how do we deal with it?
I had Rod Berger on, and he said, Laura, how often do you think about microplastics in your water? And I said, not very much. And he was like, yeah, but they're actually impacting your health quite a bit, and they're all over your water. And AI is the same way. You don't have to think about it. It's coming at you anyways, and you need to think about it like that. I also recently heard, and you said this and it reminded me, I read an article that claimed we will change more in education in the next 5 years than we have in the last 100.
Yeah, if you look at the speed of technology, the pace of change with technology in the last 10 years, what has occurred, and then, that's on a straight arc going up, and education is flatlined. Yeah. There's no way that change in education is anywhere near the pace of change in technology and or society. Something's got to give. The technology arc is not changing. If anything, it's getting steeper. So education needs to move.
Right.
How it moves is going to be, a function of, personally, I think a lot of things. I think teacher shortages and, what content is important is going to force more digital resources to be used.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because I really thought we were going to end this conversation going like a little hopeful on technology. And I think we went a little bit skeptical too, which I think is really healthy and important. But our time is winding down. So I'm going to ask you the 5 questions I ask every person on my show, so that we kind of end with a nice like joy and excitement, but also some skepticism because running schools is hard. So the first question you kind of alluded to already, the podcast is called More Than a Test, but everybody who comes on the show thinks that means something different. What do the words more than a test mean to you?
We have a responsibility to foster a love of learning in our kids.
I love that. I love how much you've come back to your kids to be happy at school. I really appreciate that. Tell me about a lit moment. And what I mean by lit moment is a moment of you in a book that is like your happy place or changed your life or something. Just a moment of you in a book.
Me in a book. I think my favorite book is The Hobbit. I've always loved The Hobbit because it's a realism and not. So I find great joy in fantasy novels. So
Do you reread The Hobbit?
I do, and Lord of the Rings, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Your favorite piece of technology?
Oh, probably my phone. I like my phone.
All right.
You can do with the phone you don't realize.
What's an app you've downloaded recently?
Probably a banking app, if anything. So, I break technology into different. It's creativity and management. It's certainly a management one.
Yeah. All right. The best advice you've ever been given?
Be yourself.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm one of 7 kids. We've had a very interesting upbringing, so a lot of it is, don't be your brothers and sisters. Be yourself.
Where in the 7 do you fall?
5.
Oh, such an interesting place. Is that impactful for you?
Oh yeah, it defines. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a product of the New York City public school system.
Yeah.
So it's your upbringing has a lot to do with how you look at life, I think.
And a book you think everyone should read?
I'm going to selfishly say my book.
I was going to let you plug it anyways. You got to give us the title. Where's the best way to get it?
It's called the Dev Leader, DEV. It stands for Design Thinking, Entrepreneurial, and Visionary Planning Leader. And it's available on Amazon.
Okay. I have to know though, when I talked to you before the show, you knew the name of the high schoolers that I had questions about. You are the ideas man at your district. You have 2 kids who are in college, and you wrote a book. Is there any lifestyle advice you could give us?
I run a school district. My wife runs everything else. So, happy wife, happy life. And she affords me a lot of time and energy to do this job. So I give her a lot of credit in my success.
Oh, that's a lovely way to end. Thank you so much for spending this time. Thanks for talking about Mineola. Like you said, there are lots of people following you. At the League of Innovative Schools, you are definitely a hero and a lighthouse for so many. And so I'm glad that we could share it a little bit broader. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on the More Than a Test podcast. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. At Amira Learning, we believe every child deserves a chance to become a reader, and we're excited to be part of this conversation. See you next week, and thanks for joining.